My family sent me a text kicking me out. I canceled the mortgage I was secretly paying for them. The next morning they called me demanding to know why the power was off. You're probably thinking those 12 minutes were rash, that I acted out of anger. You'd be wrong. Anger is loud and fast. My reaction was cold, and it was 4 years in the making. This wasn't a breakdown, it was an audit. You see, for the last 4 years, I had been the silent, invisible investor in the business of the Frank and Susan family experience. It started 4 years ago with a phone call I should have ignored. My father, Frank, his voice tight with a panic I'd never heard before. Leah, the bank. They're talking foreclosure. We're 6 payments behind. I remember the silence on my end. I was 25, living in this tiny basement apartment, finally getting my own feet under me. And he was asking me to save them. How much, I asked. The taxes are overdue, and then the monthly. It's just, we're drowning Leah. So I stepped in, I paid the back taxes, and then I took over the $2,200 monthly mortgage payment. I told myself it was for the house, the only home I'd ever known. But that was just the initiation fee. 6 months later, my mother Susan called crying. Not just crying, performing. Leah, honey, it's Olivia. She got into the private university. She deserves this. You know she does. But the tuition, it's $18,000 a year. We can't swing it. Frank's business is too slow. She deserves it. The words hung in the air. The implication was clear. Olivia deserved it, and I. I was the one who was supposed to pay for it. So I did. For 3 years, I paid her $18,000 tuition. Let's do the math. Over $70,000 in just a few years. All while I was skipping meals to make rent, all while my car had a check engine light that I just ignored. All while they continuously forgot my birthday. But when Olivia got invited on a $1,500 sorority trip, they wired her the money as a congratulations. When I made the dean's list, I got a text message. That's nice. K. It's a classic psychological dynamic. Many families, especially narcissistic ones, operate on this system. They need a golden child and a scapegoat. Olivia was the golden child. She was their reflection. Her successes were their successes. Her shine proved they were good parents. And I was the invisible one, the utility, the one who existed to absorb their failures, to fix their problems, to fund their image. My success didn't matter because my role wasn't to succeed. It was to serve. And I know what you're thinking. Why would you keep paying? Why would you let them treat you like that for so long? You have to understand. The invisible chains of the survivor are the strongest. It's a prison without bars. It's not built on threats. It's built on the agonizing, desperate hope that one day you'll do the one thing that finally makes them see you. You think just one more payment, just one more solved crisis, just one more holiday I show up to smiling, pretending it doesn't hurt. You think that this time they'll finally say, "Thank you, Leah. We're so proud of you. We see you." But that day never comes. You're not a daughter, you're an asset. And my family had just taught me a very valuable, very cold lesson. Assets can be liquidated. This wasn't revenge, it was accounting. And I was finally balancing the books. I woke up the next morning not to my alarm, but to the sound of my phone vibrating so violently on the nightstand, it sounded like an angry hornet. I didn't have to look. I knew. The payments had failed, the services had been cut, the consequences had arrived. I let it buzz for a full minute before I finally picked it up. The lock screen was a solid wall of notifications. Missed calls from Frank. Missed calls from Susan. A string of increasingly frantic texts from Olivia. I opened hers first. 8:01 a.m. My phone isn't working. I can't make calls. Fix it. 8:03 a.m. Leah, I'm serious. My data is off. What did you do? 8:10 a.m. Answer me. I have things to do today. You're screwing up my entire schedule. I scrolled to my mother's messages. Leah, you need to call us immediately. The power company just sent an alert. What's going on? And then you've created a terrible mess. Frank is furious. You've gone too far. Call us. I read every single message. I searched for two specific words. I searched for any phrase remotely close. We messed up. We were wrong. They weren't there. There was no apology, no remorse, no acknowledgement of what they had done. They weren't horrified by their own cruelty. They were just inconvenienced. They weren't panicking because they had betrayed me. They were panicking because the bank account they'd been bleeding dry was suddenly closed. I didn't reply to a single one. I went back to my laptop and started my workday. I was in the middle of a logistics spreadsheet when the real escalation came. My phone lit up again, this time with a notification from Facebook. Frank had tagged me in a post. I clicked it. My blood didn't boil. It turned to ice. He had posted a picture of himself and Susan smiling with a long caption. It's a sad day when you realize you've given everything to a child, only to have them be selfish and ungrateful. Some people forget who raised them, who put a roof over their head. We've always been a family that values loyalty, but I guess that's a one-way street. Praying for clarity. He hadn't just insulted me in private. He'd taken it public. He was trying to frame me as the villain, to paint me as the ungrateful one, all to save face with his friends. He was actually, truly, publicly claiming to be the victim. I stared at the post. I saw the comments trickling in from his friends, people who had no idea I was paying his mortgage. You're a good man, Frank. Family should always come first. I'm sorry she's treating you this way. He wasn't sorry. He was doubling down. Any last lingering ember of guilt I had, any tiny stupid part of me that wondered if I had overreacted, it was gone. He had just handed me a signed permission slip to proceed. This wasn't just about cutting them off anymore. This was about getting back what was mine. I didn't comment on his post. I didn't text him. I picked up my phone and made a different call. Hi, Julia. It's Leah. I need to schedule a meeting. Yes, it's about my family, and I'm going to need you to be my lawyer. I didn't just want to be free of them. I wanted them to understand that their actions had a cost. This wasn't just about the mortgage anymore. This was about the $54,000 in tuition I'd paid for Olivia. I called Julia back that afternoon. Hey, it's me again. I have a question about verbal contracts. Julia's voice was all business. Okay, talk to me. When my mother asked me to pay for Olivia's tuition, I said she called it a loan until the business was back on its feet. Does that hold up? There was a pause, and I could hear her typing. It's messy, Leah, but it establishes intent. You have the bank transfers showing the exact amounts paid directly to the university, every single one I said. Good. Then we don't just send a letter. We send a formal demand. We'll pursue a lien against the house for the full $54,000 on top of the mortgage payments you made, which we can argue was a verbal agreement to maintain a shared asset. Do it, I said. This is going to get ugly, Leah. Are you prepared for that? I thought about the Facebook post. About Frank calling me selfish and ungrateful while his friends praised him? I'm prepared, I said. Send the demand letter. Julia said she'd start drafting it and would need to pull the full title records for the house in Denver to begin the lien process. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. My family had clearly received the demand letter. The silence was heavy like the air before a thunderstorm. Then on Thursday, Julia called. Her voice was different, not like a lawyer, but like a friend who was about to deliver bad news. Leah, are you sitting down? I am now. What's wrong? I was pulling the title records like we discussed, she said slowly, and I went back a bit further to look at the probate records from when your grandmother passed 2 years ago. Okay. Your grandmother, Frank's mother. She left you an inheritance. I just sat there. What? No, she didn't. Frank said she left everything to him and my uncle to be split fairly when they sold her house. That's not what the will says, Leah. The will specifically bequeaths $50,000 tax-free directly to you. It was a separate provision, just for you. $50,000. I had never seen a penny of it. Julia the First. I never knew. They never told me. It gets worse, she said, and her voice dropped. I was confused, so I called the probate court. The funds were disbursed from the estate account 18 months ago. The check was cashed. But how? I never signed anything. I know, Julia said softly. I had them fax me a copy of the withdrawal authorization and the endorsed check. Leah, the signature isn't yours. It's not even a good forgery. He just scribbled your name and deposited it into his own account. The phone felt cold in my hand. The spreadsheet, the mortgage, the tuition, that was manipulation. This. He stole from me, I whispered. He didn't just take my money. He stole my grandmother's. Yes, Julia said. Frank didn't just manipulate you, Leah. He committed felony forgery and inheritance theft. I thought about the Facebook post. Some people forget who raised them. I thought about his anger, his accusations of my selfishness. The entire time he had been sitting on $50,000 of my money. Leah, are you still there? I'm here, I said. My voice was calm, frighteningly calm. The last bit of emotion, the last flicker of doubt, just evaporated. What do you want to do? She asked. I want you to call the detective you worked with on that fraud case last year, I said. The one who handles financial crimes. I want to file a police report, and then I want you to add that $50,000 plus interest and damages to the demand letter. This wasn't a family drama anymore. This was a crime. And I wasn't just balancing the books. I was building a case. The demand letter and the police report landed on the same day. I know, because the chaos started about 6 hours later. It wasn't a call this time. It was a sound. A frantic, desperate pounding on my apartment door that echoed through the basement hallway. I looked through the peephole. It was them, Frank and Susan, standing there. They looked ruined. My father, who had always seemed so large and imposing, looked gray and small. My mother's eyes were red and swollen, her hair a mess. The performance was gone. This was raw panic. I took a deep breath, unlocked the deadbolt, and opened the door. My mother tried to rush in, but I just stood in the doorway, blocking her path. Leah. Oh, thank God. Leah, you have to stop this, she sobbed, grabbing my arm. I didn't pull away. I just looked at her hand until she let go. Stop what, Mom? The bank. The lawyer's letter. They're talking about a lien, about foreclosure, and a detective called Leah. A detective. About your grandmother's will. What did you do? My father, who had been silent, finally spoke. His voice was a hoarse whisper. You don't understand. It was. It was a misunderstanding, Leah. The money. He couldn't even say it. He couldn't admit to the theft. He just stood there, a collapsed version of the man who had called me selfish on Facebook. A misunderstanding, I asked. My voice was quiet, clinical. He's your father, Susan shrieked, her voice cracking. He's your father. You're destroying him. You're destroying this family. Whatever he did, you have to stop this. Do something for your sister, for us. I looked at them. Two people I didn't recognize standing at my door, demanding I fix a fire they had started. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I turned, walked to my desk, and picked up a manila folder. I walked back to the door and handed it to my mother. She looked at it, confused, her hands shaking. What is this? You asked me to do something, I said. My voice was perfectly even. I already did. That's a copy of the police report I filed, and underneath it you'll find the high-resolution scan of the forged signature from the bank. The detective found it very helpful. Goodbye, Mom. I closed the door, slowly, deliberately, in their stunned, uncomprehending faces. I heard my mother let out a sound, a wail that was cut off, as the deadbolt clicked into place. I stood there for a long time, just listening to the muffled sounds of their panic on the other side of the wood. This wasn't revenge. Revenge is hot. It's about inflicting pain. This was an amputation. You can't heal a part of you that has become toxic. You can't reason with it. You can't hope it will get better. You just have to cut it off to save the rest of yourself. For years I believed that family was an obligation, that blood was a bond you had to honor, no matter how much it cost you. But standing there listening to the echoes of their chaos, I finally understood the truth. Letting go of a toxic bloodline isn't an act of betrayal. It's the ultimate act of self-preservation. It's not about what you're losing. It's about what you're finally choosing to save. I walked away from the door and I didn't look back. The fallout wasn't a single dramatic explosion. It was a series of quiet, methodical, and logical consequences. The house in Denver, the one I had poured so much of my life into, went to auction. It sold quickly. The bank took its share, the lawyers took theirs, and then the court issued a check. Frank's legal troubles didn't just go away. Faced with Julia's evidence and the looming fraud case, he pleaded guilty to felony forgery. He managed to avoid jail time, but just barely. He received 5 years of probation and a court order to pay full restitution for the $50,000 he stole from me. He would be paying that back for the rest of his life. And my sisters, Olivia and Emma, the endless river of money that had funded their deserved lifestyles simply dried up. Without the Bank of Leah propping up Frank's finances, there was nothing left. Olivia had to drop out of her expensive private university and transfer to the state school. Emma, I heard, was now working her first part-time job at the mall. They were finally learning. The lesson I had learned at 18 life has a cost, and eventually everyone has to pay their own way. I was in my apartment, the same basement apartment that had been my fortress, when the final email notification lit up my screen. Subject wire, transfer confirmation. I logged into my bank account. A transfer of $104,000 was pending. A combination of the restitution, the proceeds from the house sale, and the recovered tuition loan. It didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a refund. I opened my old laptop and pulled up the spreadsheet I had kept for 4 years, the one where I had meticulously tracked every payment. Column A, date. Column B, mortgage, $2,200. Column C, Olivia's tuition, $1,500. On and on it went, a perfect, detailed record of my own erasure. I stared at the grand total at the bottom. Then I looked at the new larger number in my bank account. I highlighted the entire spreadsheet, every cell, every number, every painful memory, and I hit delete. The file vanished. The slate was clean. I leaned back in my chair and just listened. The old hollow silence of my childhood had been a suffocating void, a space defined by all the love that wasn't there. This was a new silence. It wasn't empty. It was full. It was the sound of my own breathing, the sound of the city outside my window, the sound of peace. It was the sound of a balance sheet finally perfectly and completely settled. For anyone out there who is feeling invisible in your own family, remember this. You have the right to build your own peace. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire just to keep others warm. Do you deserve to be seen? Do you deserve respect? Let me know your story down in the comments.